As we wrap up the 2024 movie season, it's time to reflect on the highs and lows of the year's releases. Each year brings its own unique flavor, and in this video, I'll share my top picks, the films that fell short of expectations, and a ranking of comic book movies from worst to best. You'll find timestamps in the description if you want to jump to a specific list. I'm also eager to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share your own list, whether it's 5, 3, or even just one movie that disappointed you the most this year. Just a quick note, these are my personal opinions, so please don't take offense if your favorite or least favorite film isn't mentioned. Now, let's dive into the ranking of comic book movies released in 2024. I anticipate some will point out technicalities regarding certain films, like, isn't that technically a comic book movie? Or what about Hellboy? You didn't even consider it. However, I'm focusing on the films I've seen that clearly fit the comic book genre. Let's kick things off with the standout film of the year, which I believe is universally acknowledged as the best, even by those who may not have enjoyed it. That film is Deadpool and Wolverine, the much anticipated entry that finally integrates Deadpool into the MCU alongside Wolverine. It's an exhilarating ride that unfortunately has faced backlash from some who criticize its abundance of cameos, references, and nostalgia. While it may not be flawless, it delivered plenty of laughs, unexpected moments, and retained the emotional core that fans loved in the previous Deadpool films. Many of us were concerned that Disney would compromise the film's rated R essence, but they managed to maintain that spirit. Next on the agenda, we take a significant plunge, but that's just the nature of this year. Venom: The Last Dance. Honestly, I'm not a fan of these Venom films, and I'm relieved that this trilogy has come to an end. I still had fun with the character, but the way they wrapped up the trilogy felt quite bizarre, introducing a new antagonist at the last moment and including entire scenes that could have sidestepped the main issue, yet we still had to have a dance scene in Vegas. All of this to tickle our sensitive spinning. The only part of the film I genuinely enjoyed was the final act, where we experienced some symbiote chaos, making the movie really entertaining for a brief 5 to 10 minutes. Coming in at number 3, Kraven the Hunter. It's surprising that half of this list consists of Sony's Spider-Man spin-off films, and Kraven finds its place here. This movie is likely to earn the least among all the Spider-Man spin-offs, yet it's not necessarily the worst. Some may overlook its flaws because it features Kraven, and Aaron Taylor Johnson does bring a certain coolness to the character, along with some enjoyable action sequences, I must admit. But the R rating was a significant plus, but that Rhino fight scene, terrible. Those random quirky moments that lack context or explanation, just play the clip.
All of our guys are dead.
I'm really glad that Sony is starting to recognize the need for a fresh approach. When they return to making spin-off films, I hope there'll be an improvement over these. Next up, we have The Crow, a film that likely left many viewers feeling let down. It might rank higher on my list of the year's worst comic book adaptations, but I lack the deep nostalgia for the Crow franchise that some fans possess. Even so, I can't help but recognize how bizarre the direction of this film was. The punk rock romance angle seemed more focused on the characters' physical relationship than anything else. While there were a few attempts at exciting fight scenes, the overall experience was rather dull, and I found myself struggling to stay engaged. I don't know how you can take a premise as interesting as The Crow and make it feel so dull and bland. Now, moving on to my pick for the second worst comic book movie of 2024, Madame Web. Oh boy, Madame Web is likely to be remembered as one of the most unintentionally hilarious comic book films of the century. Even Venom and Kraven come off as superior in comparison. This film is packed with bizarre dialogue and odd plot choices, like a character suddenly traveling to Peru for no apparent reason. It was so poorly executed that they had to distance it from the Venom universe. Just think about how bad it must be to not even be able to stand alongside Morbius and Venom, and you wasted Sydney Sweeney in a tight Spider-Man outfit. It's a real misstep movie. However, the title of the worst comic book movie of the year goes to none other than Joker 2. It's remarkable how disappointing this film turned out to be, leaving many fans of the original feeling frustrated. There are even conspiracy theories suggesting that Todd Phillips intentionally made a subpar film as a sort of rebellion against the audience. audience. He took Warner Brothers funding and crafted an FU movie, which some might find impressive. Even if that's true, why does that make you cool or a great filmmaker? That you're willing to say, I hate you, the fans of The Joker? Here's your boy dead on the ground. And also, we put it in his butt, because that's a thing that happens in this movie. You gotta be curious where you guys rank that. But now, let's dive into my favorite movies of the year. I'll keep it brief, because I know you're eager to hear about the most disappointing films. Starting off at number 10, we have Sonic Movie 3. I fully recognize that Sonic isn't among the top 10 films of the year by critical standards. There are certainly many films that are likely superior to Sonic 3. However, in terms of my personal taste and the films I plan to rewatch throughout my life, Sonic 3 holds a special place. It's impressive to see a franchise improve with each installment, culminating in the introduction of one of the coolest video game characters, Shadow, whose backstory is treated with the respect it deserves on screen. Additionally, having Jim Carrey appear in 3 consecutive films, with him taking on 2 roles in this one, is quite an achievement. And let's not forget that thrilling final act. If you're a Sonic fan, you'll definitely have a big grin on your face. It was simply a fun experience, so how could I not include it on my list? At number 9, we have Alien Romulus. I wanted to mention it here as well because it revitalized the Alien franchise in a way that excites me for what's to come. With a sequel already confirmed, it successfully brought back the horror elements I've been longing for, and I truly appreciate when a franchise can reignite my interest in a series I thought I might be moving away from. Number 8 on my list is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'm still so shocked some people walked out of this movie just not a fan of it. This movie faced immense expectations due to Matt Reeves' outstanding work on the earlier installments. I initially doubted it could measure up, and while it does run a bit longer than necessary, I believe it still has the potential to be just as impressive, if not slightly better than its predecessors. Plus, it features one of my favorite lines from 2024. What a wonderful day! Coming in at number 7 is Challengers. I went into this film with no real expectations. Although I'm a fan of Zendaya and Luca Guadagnino, I was taken aback by how this movie ignited a passion for tennis in me, a sport I usually don't care about. It was an exhilarating sports film packed with adrenaline, an electrifying techno score, and some truly innovative camera work that made tennis captivating on screen. At number 6, we have Inside Out 2. Pixar, you've made a triumphant return. This year also saw the release of another Disney animated film, Moana 2, which was merely average, but Inside Out 2 was the highly anticipated sequel that truly met the high bar set by its predecessor. With stunning animation and a touching narrative, it delivered the emotional depth we've come to expect from Pixar, leaving me with tears in my eyes. Number 5 on my list, Furiosa. I'm truly disheartened by those who chose not to support this film in theaters, leading to its disappointing performance. It's a shame when a movie of such quality doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Anya Taylor-Joy's portrayal of Furiosa and the decade-long journey her character endures, culminating in her backstory from Mad Max Fury Road, is a narrative I never realized I needed. Typically, I'm not a fan of prequels, since we already know the character's fate, and it rarely ever does much to change my mind about that character. However, Furiosa is an exception that reshaped my feelings entirely. While I always appreciated Furiosa, I now hold a profound and tragic respect for her struggles, which enhances my appreciation for Mad Max Fury Road. That's what a prequel should achieve. Number 4 on my list, The Substance. I strive to keep my top 10 list from being overly dominated by horror films, despite being a huge fan of the genre. Therefore, I was selective with my choices, and The Substance definitely earned its spot. It explores the existential dread of aging and the links one might go to reclaim lost youth. Truly, a smart and innovative take. Films like this elevate the horror genre and give it a positive reputation. Number 3 on my list, Dune Part 2. Perhaps it made the list due to the iconic popcorn bucket it inspired and the tumultuous events of 2024, but honestly, this film represents exceptional filmmaking. Only Denis Villeneuve could successfully adapt such a complex piece of literature, making the bizarre and fantastical elements of this universe come to life. I can hardly wait for Part 3 to arrive. Number 2 on the list, The Heretic. Growing up Catholic, I was always somebody a little skeptical about my faith and religion, and what exactly is going on. Just the way this movie goes about breaking down common inconsistencies and weird coincidences with other religions, they managed to do it in a way that was both funny and not truly insulting. It's the kind of movie that's just pointing at you and laughing in your face if you're religious, while still maintaining a great balance of also protecting what you believe in and why maybe that is okay. Not just that, but also the way it magnifies how things are sometimes just a big old marketing gimmick. Now let's move on to the top pick. Some of you might chuckle at my choice. You may think, really? That's the top pick? I could see it being lower on the list, but number one, absolutely the number one spot goes to The Wild Robot. I genuinely adore this film. I approached it with minimal expectations, knowing I would likely enjoy it based on the trailers, but I was completely unprepared for the emotional impact and the stunning narrative that unfolded before me. The subtle, mature humor sprinkled throughout was a delightful surprise as well. This is the definition of a film. Just because it was made for kids does not mean it has to be sloppy. Beautiful, profound, and it has such a great message about moms and parents and their sacrifice in raising their child. Feel free to laugh, but this is the film that left me thinking, this is why I cherish movies. It was truly remarkable. Let's dive into the final list, our most disappointing movies of 2024. These are the films that, despite some initial expectations, ultimately fell flat and left us feeling let down. Starting off at number 10, Maxine, the conclusion of the Pearl/X trilogy. I had high hopes for this installment, but it ended up being somewhat underwhelming. While there were some standout moments, impressive visuals, and Mia Goth delivered a strong performance, the climax and resolution just didn't provide the satisfying payoff I was anticipating from this series. At number 9, we have Time Cut. This might not be a film many of you were eagerly awaiting, but I had been excited about it for over a year and a half. Marketed as Scream meets Back to the Future 2 of my all-time favorites, I was all in. I appreciated the screenwriter Michael Kennedy, and even though it was going straight to Netflix, I was ready to give it a chance. Unfortunately, I was left disappointed throughout the entire viewing experience. The film attempts to transition from present-day 2024 to the early 2000s, but it fails to capture the essence of that era. The differences between the two time periods felt minimal, aside from the fashion choices. The script was poorly executed, the humor fell flat, and the kills lacked excitement. Although it was produced before the Amazon Prime film Totally Killer, the similarities are hard to ignore, especially with the nonsensical ending. Time Cut was a major letdown for me. Number 8 on the list, Borderlands. I might not have had the highest hopes for this film since I've never played any Borderlands games, but with a cast featuring Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Jack Black voicing Claptrap, I expected at least some entertainment. Unfortunately, it felt like a cheap imitation of Guardians of the Galaxy. It dragged down the progress that Sonic had made in making video game adaptations somewhat respectable. Number 7 on my list, Imaginary. There were plenty of horror films that some might have been eager to see, like Night Swim or Tarot, but out of all of them, Imaginary frustrated me the most. The obvious question arises, how can you call yourself imaginary and lack creativity? This is one of those instances where Blumhouse seems to settle for mediocrity, banking on a solid marketing strategy and a low budget to ensure success, delivering a film that's merely acceptable. These are the types of movies that tarnish Blumhouse's reputation. We know that at the start of each year, we can expect 2 or 3 of these from them, and it's time for Blumhouse to change that. Number 6 on the list, I gave it to Kraven the Hunter. I didn't have high expectations, but with an R rating that should have been applied to Venom from the start, you'd think it would be more entertaining than it was. Number 5 on the list, I gave it to The Crow. I genuinely believe we need to stop attempting to remake the original Brandon Lee film with its characters and instead create a scenario where someone embarks on a John Wick-style revenge quest with the powers of the Crow. And let's leave out the punk rock and unnecessary sexy elements. Number 4 on my list, Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. I had to take the time to watch this film, so it's making the list. But seriously, DreamWorks, after creating a stunning work like The Wild Robot, why not reach into your creative vault and actually produce a genuine Megamind sequel? You might be surprised by the box office success it could achieve, and this lackluster film certainly wasn't what we were hoping for. for. Number 3 on the list, Madam Web. I've already expressed how absurd this movie is, but one of the strangest decisions that keeps bothering me is casting Emma Roberts as Peter Parker's mother with a tiny baby Peter. And that entire storyline, all that star power, it amounted to nothing. Number 2 on the list, Joker 2. This was nearly the top contender for the worst, but at least we can take solace in knowing it's finished. We won't be seeing Joker 3. There's bound to be an analysis on how to completely ruin a franchise. Introducing a musical element when that's not what the audience wants, wasting Lady Gaga's talent as Harley Quinn, such brilliant casting that ultimately led nowhere, and then confirming a fan theory that's been around since the first film that he's not the real Joker. That's just wrong. Todd Phillips deserves a timeout. And number 1 on my list, honestly, this was the biggest letdown of the year for me, and that's The Strangers Chapter 1. Sure, Joker 2 left me feeling more frustrated, but at least I know it's over. With The Strangers Chapter 1, it kicked off poorly, and I'm still facing the prospect of 2 more films I'll have to endure. You don't have to watch it. I do. As a fan of The Strangers, I'm obligated to be there, even if they turn out to be terrible. I was thrilled when I learned they were making 3 Strangers films to be shot consecutively. They promised a well-thought-out trilogy, potentially delving into the origins of the Strangers, which genuinely terrified me. I never expected the first film to be a mere imitation of the original, especially while squandering its R rating. With an R rating, I anticipated more violence or intense scenes to enhance the viewing experience. The Strangers was never intended to become a franchise, but now that it has, one would hope for something innovative. At this point, I can only wish that the next 2 installments are at least somewhat enjoyable. That pretty much sums up my thoughts on 2024. I'm eager to hear your opinions. Feel free to agree or disagree. It's all in good fun, so don't take it too seriously. Looking ahead, I hope 2025 brings us something better. Remember to like and subscribe. As always, I'm Andrew. Take care.